Hello, everyone. What's up? And welcome back to the Capital Stack. So today we have an amazing show, and I'm really excited to share our featured guest story with you and his perspective. Our guest for today is Mike Morawski, and he's a 30-plus year real estate investment veteran who has controlled over 285 million in real estate transactions. You heard that right. Okay, he's an entrepreneur, he's an author, a real estate trainer, a public speaker, and a personal coach with a desire to help others live an extraordinary life. And I absolutely love that goal. Mike has extensive experience in the multifamily space and in other asset types, but predominantly in the multifamily space. And just happy to share kind of his story with you. And with that, we'll get right into it. So Mike, wanted to welcome you to the show. I'm very, very happy to have you here. Happy to share your story and your mission with the world. So why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, Brandon, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. And you just had to stick that plus in there, didn't you?
Yeah, I didn't mean to age you.
Dating me before I even get a chance to do it myself. So, I've been in real estate 30 years, started out on the residential side. I actually had a general contracting business for a number of years and really successful. And like any entrepreneur, I was doing everything. So I was, hiring people, firing people, ordering material. I was marketing. I was doing the sales calls, putting contracts together, doing the bookkeeping. And I was still working in the field as banging nails as a contractor. And I remember clearly waking up one morning. I sat up next to my wife and said, man, I just can't do this anymore. I was burnt out. And fortunately, I had somebody knocking on my door to buy my company. And so I sold the company, took a year off. And, as an entrepreneur, you never take time off. So I don't think I really took a year off. But during that time, my house had a couple of houses. And this is long before it was sexy, right? Today everybody house hacks. It's kind of a way of life, but back then it really wasn't. And so I had heard Jim Rohn speak years ago and say that success leaves clues, and that if you find successful people and model what they do, you can ultimately cut your learning curve and create your own success. And so I met a real estate agent along the way who at the time was extremely successful. And I went to him and said, thinking about going in the real estate business. And he really encouraged me to do so. He said, I think you'd be good at it. And, you have a great way with people and building relationships. And so I decided to go into the real estate space. And my first 9 months in the business, I sold 78 houses. I was RE/MAX Rookie of the Year. I went on to build a team selling 125 homes a year and did that consecutively for about 12 years. 2005 rolled around and I saw that the market was starting to soften. And I wasn't really sure what was going to happen or what was going to transpire in the marketplace. But what I decided to do was take a year off. I decided that I wanted to go in the apartment business at that point. And, I had 7 people working for me and hated to be the guy giving bad news to anybody. And so I decided to go out and make the leap from the residential side into the multifamily space. And I syndicated my first multifamily offering. And it was a small 11-unit apartment house, northwest suburbs of Chicago. And it went so well that over the next 30 months, I was able to raise $18 million. I bought $60 million worth of real estate. It was in 5 different U.S. markets because very quickly I learned that investing in Chicago at the time didn't make a lot of sense. And I also vertically integrated a property management company managing 7,500 units. Now, I did that in a very short period of time, 30 months. And we grew really fast as a company. And I always tell people, I say that was the first mistake I made, was growing so fast. That this is a marathon, not a sprint. Take your time, you'll get there,
Hmm.
I was undercapitalized, made a couple mistakes along the way. So 2008 rolled around, and as 2008 rolled around, it was like running into a brick wall in a freight train at 200 miles an hour. Because of the instability that we created in the company, we started to come off the rails as the CMBS markets turned upside down and all the foreclosures started happening. And in my infinite wisdom, I thought, well, geez, people are going to need a place to live. They're losing their houses. They're going to move in apartments. But little did I think people were going to move back home. And so during that time, we grew that company. I owned 4,000 units, but occupancies dropped out, and people couldn't pay rent anymore, and people moved out, and you had to evict people. And all of a sudden, I'm wondering, how to keep the ship floating, so to say, because we were in trouble. So I decided what I would start to do is try and move money back and forth between companies. So I had about 38 different companies, and I started to move money back and forth from profitable to non-profitable, thinking that I'd keep it shored up. I went to my accountant, went to my attorney. They both said, hey, it's okay to do that. Just leave a paper trail. And I did that. Here's where the problem was, though. In the real estate business, in the business that we're in, we need to be transparent, and we need to be telling people exactly what we're doing. And I didn't do that. So I didn't disclose to my investors the movement of that money. And Brandon, as a result of that movement of money, I wound up being charged on wire fraud and mail fraud charges for non-disclosure issues, and wound up being sentenced to 10 years in federal prison.
Yeah. And Mike, I have to tell you, I really appreciate you sharing your story. We spoke briefly here before we started recording, and I told you that it has made an impact on me. I think it's a very powerful one. There are a lot of lessons that we can learn from your story, and what underpins it is resilience and sort of the reality of kind of having second chances. And so I appreciate you sharing that. When I attended the GOB Network Conference in Chicago, and I heard you speak there, and immediately when you kind of walked off the stage, I made a beeline straight for you and said, hey, Mike, I want to talk. And so, again, just really appreciate that. So there's some things that I wanted to dig into, and I want to ask you briefly about the last point that you made, the importance of establishing a cadence and a pace in your business. And so what advice would you give then to someone who's an aspiring, business owner, entrepreneur, general partner, is in the syndication space, and they really have that urge to say, I have a vision and I want to drive toward that vision and I want to get there now. What would you say to help them sort of temper that just a bit without having to go through being overwhelmed and maybe making a mistake?
Yeah, so here's part of the issue, right? We grew so fast. I thought I had a good team behind me that was stabilizing assets, and I thought I had, a good support staff where I didn't really need to pay a lot of attention. So, Brandon, I say I made 5 mistakes, right? I grew too fast, very unstable. I think people could slow down just a pace, right? A key word, cadence, right? Be slow about what you're doing. You'll get there, especially if you have the desire and the wherewithal to move the ball forward. But I was undercapitalized. I didn't raise enough capital in the company, and then I was over leveraged. So I always say I don't know who was worse, the banks or for giving me the money or me for taking the money, because I was 85% loan to value on $60 million worth of real estate. There's no cushion there. So I tell people today, hey, listen, make sure that you're at least 65 to 70% LTV on your deals, especially headed into the market conditions that we're headed into now. And part of the problem back then too was that the Bernie Madoff thing had happened, and there was all this, everybody was worried about people ripping people off. And I always tell people, I say, look, I never flew private. I didn't buy a big house. I didn't have a fancy car. I didn't, have a boat. I was the neighborhood baseball coach. I was home most nights for dinner. And, I got ripped from that to live in a 12 by 12 room with 3 men I didn't know, nor did I like, right? And wondering what the hell happened in my life. And it was because I didn't pay attention to the details. So the advice I would give, to shorten that up a little is listen, pay attention to the details. Look around you. It's okay. We all put blinders on. Go ahead, put your blinders on, but don't have them so tight that you can't see the peripheral vision around the side, right? And then you brought up another point, the resilience, right? And that's really what this story is about. Yeah, I had this great success. I had $100 million company. I lost it all. I went to prison. I have, and there's still a lot of, and I'm terribly sorry for what I did, right? I feel bad for my investors for their losses, and if God willing, someday it'll all get made up. But I always say that that's what happened. But what are you going to do going forward? Because we can't let our past define our future. And I believe that there's so many people that are trapped in mental prisons. I might have been behind the wall, but there's mental prisons of addiction, of abuse, of things that have happened in people's lives where they walk around thinking I'm not good enough or I can't do this. Well, I went to prison thinking my life was over. And what was I going to do? That I would never do multifamily investing again. That the career that I loved, the passion that I had was gone. And I was probably in prison about 3 weeks, and my wife decided she was going to divorce me. And Brandon, that wrecked me. Now I'm really wondering what happened and what am I going to do? And I'm probably in prison like 6 weeks. I walk into the gym one day and some guy walks up to me and says, hey, don't let these people beat you. All they want to do is take from you everything you've ever known, right? They can take your real estate, they can take your business, they can destroy your family, but they can't take who you are. They can't take what helped you get to where you're at, to build what you built. You can get it all back. And then he encouraged me. He said, come to my class every day. Brandon, I had gone from running marathons, I was to being 35 pounds overweight and hating myself, right? And he said, come to my gym or come to my class. You'll start working out. You'll start losing weight, feeling better. And I did all that. And I don't know what it was, but a switch flipped one day. And I started going to his class. I started working out. I started to feel better. I decided to write, I wrote 2 books while I was gone. One is called Exit Plan, Your Complete Guide to Multifamily Investing and Why You Need an Exit Plan Before You Buy. And I'd love to give a copy away to your listeners at the end of the show.
Oh, thank you.
I also wrote a book on property management that get published this year. I wrote an ethics study course. I taught real estate investing, property management, and ethics in prison for 6 years. How ironic, right? A federal inmate teaching ethics in prison. I went to college. I got a bachelor's degree in theology. I went on to be on an outreach program because I was a model inmate. And I went out, spoke in the community, told my story to small business owners and local college students. I happened to meet a professor from the University of Minnesota who we co-authored a paper together that got published in the Business Journal of Ethics and gets taught at the collegiate level for forensic accounting and sales and marketing classes. Today I'm home. I'm in the coaching and training business. I work with multifamily investors, helping them to live a balanced lifestyle and not make the mistakes I'm making while scaling their business. And I recently was approved by the SEC to go back and sponsor deals, to be an issuer of securities. And we just bought our first multifamily deal. So It's
Congrats.
kind of, things have kind of come full cycle. Now, not everything's perfect. I have kids that don't talk to me and ex-wives that, don't like me, but, I every day I'm working to, rebuild what once was. And, the goal today is to get back to 5,000 units and, have a nice portfolio again.
And awesome. And I tell you, Mike, again, just a powerful story. I wake up every day thankful for today. I think thankful for what I can do today. And I say that because you mentioned how people are trapped in yesterday, and for some people they don't allow themselves to move forward, because they're still being pulled back by yesterday. And I try to wake up every day saying, I'm thankful for today. I'm going to make the every effort to maximize my day. Yesterday is gone, and I'll move forward. You also mentioned Jim Rohn, which Jim Rohn, to me, his lessons ring true. I think they will forever, as far as I'm concerned. And one of the things that he says is, what's important is who you're becoming, right? And so, I think that that's a powerful kind of reference that you made there. And I want to say too that, look, I believe that, in a way, someone who has been on the other side, I'll say, of an ethics issue, is a good, candidate to say, here are the things that you need to look out for. So often you only hear one side, which is kind of, don't do these things. But then when you've been on the other side of it, and so you can now say, listen, these are the things, don't make these mistakes. And here's what happens when you make these mistakes. So I believe that you're definitely a candidate for that, just as much as anyone who has not been on the other side is. So really appreciate that breakdown there. And so I'd like to get your thoughts on something, right? Just at just a high level, who is a good candidate for multifamily and real estate investing, in your perspective?
Well, I think anybody who has a desire to, build a business, who loves real estate. I think that if you know the real estate fundamentals and understand the economies of scale that multifamily offers, then you're a great candidate to go and build a multifamily business. I don't believe that age even matters, right? I just got off the phone with somebody this morning who's 25 years old, has some corporate experience in the multifamily space, but he started a fund and he's raising capital so anybody can do this business if they want to go do this business. Doesn't matter, age, race, male, female. I believe anybody can do the business. And it's, some of our peers, Brandon, some of the people, if we look around, that are doing the multifamily business, who are syndicating deals, raising capital, who are operating and managing deals, you'd say, wow, really?
Yeah.
I mean, I know some of them too. So
yeah. I by profession, I'm a petroleum engineer, and I've had conversations with some of my former coworkers who, they've reached out to me and said, hey, Brandon, I really like what the path that you're going down, and I'm interested in the syndication space on the passive side, but I'm a little nervous because I don't have enough information, and I want to do an international and a global market study, and then I want to do a drill down to a local study and these kinds of things. And so they're thinking like a typical kind of engineer, where they want to overanalyze it, and they also carry the same expectation of the folks who are raising capital and who are putting these deals together. And I tell them that I can appreciate that expectation, but the reality is you don't have to have that in order to put a deal together. One of the benefits of real estate is that it is a very tangible, a very practical business, and it is, in its nature, it is fairly simplistic. Making sure that everything runs as planned and everything, and you're paying attention to the details. That's the difficult part, but not from a technical standpoint. And so, yeah, you're right. It's some of the folks who are on the on the sponsorship side, it's not that they are, rocket scientists, but it's that they know how to pay attention to the details. They know how to pull a team together and rely on their team. And they realize that they don't have to have all of the pieces themselves. Because I think that's where a lot of people who are, kind of quote unquote smart trip themselves up. They want to do all of it. And this is just not the business for them, because you're not going to succeed if you want to be the focal point of everything. You want to do all of it. You have to have a team, rely on your team.
Yeah, great point. I always tell people, I say, listen, there's 30 different things when you're syndicating a deal. Everything from building relationships with brokers, finding deals, doing the underwriting, closing the deal, all the compliance things, the legal documents, insurance, financing, all the due diligence, the inspections. There's so many things. Write a list of what they all are. Find what you're good at, get really good at it, then go find other players that are good at the other stuff. And that's how you put a good team together.
Yeah, that's right. There's a book called Who, Not How.
Yeah.
Where it touches on this very thing. It's as long as you have a clear vision and a clear kind of, you can convey exactly what the goal is and what success looks like. Then the next step is, so you frame that up, but then after that you say, okay, who can I find that can help me achieve the goal? And just the results from doing that exercise, I believe, are just far and away, better than trying to do it all yourself. I mean, can you even imagine it? You have to try and be a broker. You'd have to be you'd have to be an inspector. It just is impossible to do it all. So yeah, really big on focusing on team. So I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned, Mike, that you started off on the single family side. I also started off on the single family side. But just for the listeners who might want some clarity around, okay, well, why is multifamily better? Like, can you go through that? Why is multifamily a better asset class than single family in your view?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons. I've owned 25 or 30 and even more rentals at one time. And when you look at 25, roofs, furnaces, hot water heaters, driveways, all spread out across a couple of towns, that's a lot of work. If you got 4 or 5 repairs on a Saturday morning, you have to go out and do, that's a lot of driving around. It's a lot of time effort. But if I own a 10, 20, 100 unit property in one location, and I have one roof or 2 roofs, and I have, one furnace, one hot water heater, that repair costs are kept down. Those maintenance issues are kept down. The time issue is kept down. And the biggest answer that I always give people that I really like is, hey, if I own a residential property and, we're spoiled, I think, as investors over the last few years. Occupancies are up, rents are up. I think we're going into a time where some of that's going to change. And now if you own a residential property and you have a $2,000 a month mortgage and nobody lives there, that becomes painful to make that mortgage payment out of your pocket. But if I own a 10 unit apartment building and I've got a 10% vacancy, I can still pay my bills and I'm not coming out of pocket. Yeah. So that makes a big effort. And then, of course, maximizing profit, and the profitability is so much greater on the multifamily side along the way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think, it's economies of scale is what you're getting at there. It's just so much better on the multifamily side. Per one transaction can get you, 10, 20, 50, 100 doors, one or at least fewer structures. So yeah, I just think that's a huge thing there. And also, you touched on if you have a 10% vacancy as opposed to having 1 unit or 2 units and it's vacant, you have 100% or 50% vacancy, whatever it is. And that's the risk piece, right? It's that there's inherently less risk when you have the economies of scale on the multifamily side, working in your favor. And so yeah, I really appreciate that. You also mentioned to today's economy, kind of the uncertainty in today's economy. And so are you seeing any similarities between kind of the pre-credit crisis? Because I like that you touched on the recommendation that, hey, in today's market, have lower leverage, and also make sure that you're well capitalized and these kinds of things. Are you seeing some of the same mistakes kind of being made by some syndicators today, even as we go into this uncertain time?
I am. I've seen some syndicators really kind of grow real fast. I see a lot of creative underwriting these days where people are trying to push the envelope on numbers, rent growth, exit cap rates, because prices have gotten so high and you're paying more for a property, you want to deliver a good return to your investor, and projections get whacked out because now you can't perform at that level that you thought you could perform at. You're better off being less aggressive, more conservative. And, I come from a space of under promise, over deliver.
Yep.
So, a great example is, this deal that we're doing right now. I thought I could raise rents about $150 a unit on average. And I'm closer to $300 a unit, raising rent. So, I way under promised my investors, and we are definitely over delivering, which, I'd rather be in that place than have to say, oh, our estimates were wrong, our projections were wrong, the market changed. I don't want to have to backtrack and come up with excuses, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so on that note, for passive investors, what would you kind of advise them then to look out for in a potential opportunity that will help them sort of protect them against some of the downside that is inherent to the volatility that we're seeing now?
Yeah. So one thing is that there's a lot of reports out there about rent growth, right? And let's say a Florida market. They say that this year in 2020 that the Florida market rent growth is supposed to be somewhere mid to upper 20%, right? Depending on what market you're in. So I'm in the Tampa market, and they're saying that the rents in Tampa will grow 22% this year. Well, does that mean I underwrite at 22%? No. If I underwrite at 5 or 6% this year, and maybe 3% in subsequent years moving forward, I'm being more conservative. And I don't see that in some cases with some other sponsors. Take a look at a sponsor, see what successes they've had, but also see what mistakes they've made and what they've learned from them. If a sponsor is afraid to say, I made this mistake or this happened, they might not have either had the experience yet or are afraid of those mistakes. I embrace my mistakes today,
Absolutely. I'm seeing some of the same thing where the projected, rent escalations are high to make the deal work. And then similarly, the expense sort of escalations are really low or near non-existent, where they're at 1% or something like that a year, as opposed to something that's much more reasonable, and so, you're seeing that a lot, and where folks are trying to force the deal to work. And right. That's just that's the recipe for disaster. So I appreciate that perspective. And so I wanted to ask you something really quickly, kind of on the topic of, you mentioned that a passive investor needs to keep an eye out for kind of what the sponsorship team is like. So what in your view makes a great sponsorship team, to where as a passive investor, someone can feel, really really good about the deal, the business plan, and their ability to execute?
What makes it great is so really let me just get some clarification. What makes a great sponsorship team?
Yeah.
It's got a lot to do with what we were talking about earlier, that one person can't do it all themselves. And I think that when the workload is spread out across the board with the sponsor, it makes it easier for everybody. And I believe it brings a sense of, I don't want to say security, but a sense of completeness to the deal, because now if that work is spread out and everybody's got a job function and everybody takes care of each job, that the deal rides on each one of those team members. So how does the sponsorship team work together? What deals have they done? What's been their experience? Who's on that sponsorship team? What jobs does each one of the team members continue to work on, and what their success has been?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great list, kind of for the listeners to be clear on, and if you're an aspiring LP, for sure, just kind of keep an eye on that, understand how the dynamic of the team and how it functions, and so forth. So
I'll just throw this out there too. On my website, I have a free ebook, which is 27 must-ask questions to vet a sponsor. So
perfect.
Somebody could go grab that, and there's a number of questions that to ask a sponsor to get comfortable with them.
Perfect. We'll include that in the show notes, a link to that site. So yeah, Mike, we're getting close to wrapping here, but I did want to ask you for an actionable tip. So if there's someone who's listening, who's hesitating or just waiting to get in the game, what's kind of an actionable tip that they can take to start investing in real estate today?
Yeah. So don't assume that everybody you come in contact with knows that you're a real estate investor. Tell everybody that you're a real estate investor. Build a database. Talk to people about investing in your real estate deals. You need to be building relationships and working on raising capital from day one. What we do, Brandon, what you and I do, is a function of capital. And unless we can go to those investors and bring them into deals, we can't get deals closed. So the more people the more you build your database, the stronger your business platform is.
Absolutely. Incredible tip. Thanks for sharing that. So Mike, last question before we close here. How can the listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah, a great question. First of all, wherever you hang out on social media, you'll probably find me. I spend a lot of time there. I love social media, and I try to provide as much free content as I can. So whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, I have a great YouTube channel. Subscribe to that, and both on my personal side and my company, my Core Intentions sides. But I love to network with people. People can reach out to me, call me, or email me at mike@mycoreintentions.com. I'll be more than happy to connect with you and, answer questions or see if I can help give you some guidance in that.
Awesome. Thank you. So we'll include that in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
Mike, look, I really appreciate it. Again, powerful story. Love your mindset, your resilience. And I'm excited to see, kind of what's next for you in the space as you continue to grow. And so I really appreciate you being on the show.
Hey, I appreciate the time. Thanks, Brendan.